So remember, the reason why we use fiber in our cabling plant is because of its distance. It's mainly around distance. And so copper has a limitation of 326 feet or about 100 meters, whereas fiber does not have those kind of distance limitations. And so we can go from that 100 meters all the way up to several kilometers without any major issues at all. And so largely when we're designing cabling systems, fiber comes into place just because of the distance between the closets, and that's the main reason why we want to use it. From a cabling perspective, single mode fiber isn't really more expensive than multimode fiber. And so the main thing that people don't see or don't understand when they're designing it is the cost of the optics. And so depending on what fiber we choose, that will determine what kind of optics that we need. And so often what it comes into play is what's the distance that we're trying to go and how much bandwidth are we trying to get. And so based out of those two things, that will determine, well, what kind of optics do I need in order to be able to make that work properly. And so if we don't buy the right kind of fiber, it can drive up the cost of the optics in order to be able to get the end result that we're looking for. And so when you're designing it, you want to be looking at very closely, hey, what kind of fiber do I need? And then what kind of optics go along with that? And then looking at that from a cost price perspective. Now, the key here is that you want to know what your long-term requirements are going to be when you're trying to design a fiber plant. And so based on what kind of fiber you choose will determine how much life you can get out of it. So single mode fiber has the longest life to it because we can go 10 gig, 40 gig, 100 gig, and more as we go out across the years, so we get a lot of life out of that. Whereas multimode fiber has a much greater limit to it as far as how much bandwidth we can run over that multimode fiber. And so single mode fiber will give us a lot more capability in scaling our backbones up. And so we recommend, if you can, put single mode in for any kind of new fiber plant you're designing, because that'll give you the most ability to expand your network over time. If you have an existing fiber plant and you want to implement 10 gig, then what we're going to do is recommend that you have that plant looked at to determine what kind of fiber do you have today. And so multimode fiber has a whole bunch of varieties that come with it, and so you're going to need to decide and determine what flavor do you have right now. So for example, if you have a fiber plant that was put in 25 years ago, you probably have a variant that's called OM1. And OM1 has a 62.5 micron core diameter on the fiber itself, and that limits how much bandwidth we can run over that fiber, as well as how much distance we can carry over that fiber. So for example, with OM1, I can only go about 100 feet of distance and do 10 gig. Versus if I just have OM2, which has a 50 micron core size diameter, then I'm able to go up to about 700 feet at 10 gig. And so I get a lot more capacity. And then if you go from OM2 to OM3 to OM4, you can get all the way up to about 1,200 feet or so with the right optics across that fiber. And so if you know what kind of fiber you have, and especially what kind of multimode fiber that you have, what variant you have, that's going to determine what kind of distance you can go and then how much capacity you can get out of that. Different optics plugged into that fiber will also determine what the bandwidth capabilities will be. Before implementing a new network infrastructure, we highly recommend that you get your fiber recertified. And the reason why is that you may have a very good fiber backbone that's just a few years old, but over time the terminations do degrade. And so if you plug in new optics into that fiber, you may find that you have problems bringing those links back up. And so the last thing you want to do is be in the middle of a 10 gig upgrade project, and it's the middle of the night and you're cutting over and you can't get those 10 gig links back on, and you're wondering, is it my fiber or not? And so by having your fiber retested and recertified, if there's any issues, you can have it remediated, and then you'll know that your fiber backbone is in really good top shape. And if you have issues, then bringing those links up, you know it's something to do with your networking equipment. There are some products available these days that allow us to turn our multimode fiber into single mode fiber. So basically emulate single mode over multimode. And so why you would want to do this would be strictly because the cost of putting single mode fiber in or replacing your multimode fiber infrastructure is just too cost prohibitive. And that can just be due to the pathways you've got, or just the angles the fiber has, those kind of things. And so if you have a need where you need to use the multimode you've got, but you need to get more capacity out of it, you can do that using these products, and they'll manipulate the light waves and basically hand off single mode to the networking equipment. And so as far as the networking equipment is concerned, it looks like single mode fiber, acts like single mode fiber, and will allow you to run that 10 gig.